everyone. Welcome to Sideshow. Court of the Dead is Sideshow's original property, and we are within the last 48 hours of our Kickstarter for Court of the Dead Mourner's Call, a strategic tabletop board game. If you want to check out the details of that board game, you can go to sideshow.com/Kickstarter. I think last we checked, we were, around 362 and trending towards our final, very exciting stretch goal at 385, which is some custom trays to keep all your game pieces locked and loaded and organized there. I'm Anna Van Slee, director of Court of the Dead brand, and here with me today is Matt Molen, one of our senior concept artists in the design department here at Sideshow.
Hello.
Welcome, Matt. Matt worked on some 2D and 3D elements of the game, so we're going to do a little Q&A, get some insight into his process. And we've got Lacey on chat, so please go online. If you've got questions for Matt, submit them there. Lacey will gather those up, and you can talk to Matt and get some insight into his twisted mind as he draws the Court of the Dead artwork here. And Matt's actually drawing for us right now. He's got something up on his tablet. I don't know if we can get a view of top-down so we can get everyone a peek of the 2D art that Matt's working on here. What are you drawing here, Matt?
Just drawing a demon.
A demon? Is it a demon?
Yep.
That's awesome. Let's take a little bit of a look at some of the 2D cards you did here in the Mourner's deck for Court of the Dead Mourner's Call. Can you tell us a little bit about your process? How do you get to, how finished is this line work? How long does it take you to get to something like this? I'll pull these guys up here.
So each one of these takes about, I'd say about 5 hours, because it's this one's a little bit longer. This one took a little bit longer, but you take like a day to kind of create what you're thinking about or get
wrap your head around the brief of the character, and we've got like a little bit of that here with like the name, but obviously Tom, who's the creator of the Court of Dead and our creative director, gives you a much deeper download as to who the characters are and their motivation and those sorts of things, right?
Exactly, and we've seen these characters like day in day out, me especially, like, these two and these guys, but when it comes to like this, it's kind of like, all right, you can kind of have fun. This is the download, kind of figure it out, and so what you'll do is sketch kind of really roughly and then go in and actually execute.
So what was some of your inspiration for these guys here?
It was kind of like a hippie thing. So what I pretty much did was just get all the a lot of people from like the 70s Woodstock era. So
picking people out of old news photos and making them dead.
Yeah, like there's like this is Jerry Garcia right here. So.
Dead Jerry Garcia.
Yep.
So for those of you who are not familiar with the Court of the Dead, we have 3 factions in the underworld, and they play in pretty heavily into the game. You can find out your faction and get a free faction allegiance kit by going to courtofthedead.com/quiz. But those 3 factions are represented here, and you can see they each have a different color in their background here in the Mourner deck. The kind of nicotine yellow, that spirit blue, and then flesh is this kind of like red-orange color. So you've drawn with all 3 different of the factions. What are some of the things that you think about when you're trying to make a character look like they belong in the underworld?
Ooh,
aside from the fact that they're dead, of course.
Yeah, I think just through like Tom's guidance and different various artists, it was easier to, there's kind of like boundaries now you get to play in. I mean, you can definitely push it in different areas, but it's a lot of fun, like especially with these guys, because all right, they're spirits, so they're a little bit more, I don't know, loose compared to bone or flesh. Flesh is actually more, they're kind of
spirits, kind of those like warrior ninja Buddhas, right?
Yeah,
bone is more your type A military, and flesh is like your assassin type folks.
Yeah, and so it's just, bone's especially fun to do because it's the...
Yeah, it is, because it's the best action.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, they're probably my favorite ones to draw just because they're so... you have a skull and some cool metal pieces, and there's a lot more to it, but
that's right.
Those are the ones I especially like to draw.
Well, speaking of drawing, let's let you get back to that. What have you got on the iPad here today?
Like just a basic demon.
Oh, basic demon.
Well, yeah. For Court of the Dead.
Is there such a thing?
We got your just exploring demons and like teeth and horns and what you could do with it, and also experimenting with the iPad and just because I also use a Cintiq So with this one, I really wanted to try I did traditional, then digital. And so I'm trying to find the in-between, which is this, and this is the closest I can get to it, where it's like, it feels like a pencil where I don't have to draw. Like all these ones, I drew traditionally.
All the cards you did traditionally.
Yeah, the cards, and then I scanned them.
And that's just pencil on a certain kind of paper?
Yes, Bristol, cold press. And so I scanned those in, and then I will actually take them into Photoshop to kind of mess with values and just proportions of things. So it's a long process. So I was trying to find a way to streamline it a little bit quicker, and this feels pretty much the same. It's like a perfect balance between both. So
what are some of the benefits of working on an iPad as opposed to going straight to a pencil and Bristol? Or what are some of the challenges?
One is just cutting out the scanning process. Like I have a giant, nice scanner right next to my desk, but it was just like doing just scanning them in and then trying to like redraw. It just felt like I was doing a couple extra steps. So this one for me, this is fantastic. You can make whatever you want. It's like a Photoshop file. And
can you demonstrate? You were playing around earlier, just showing how you can kind of move pieces around digitally, so it lets you really kind of have some fun with obviously stuff you can't do in like a traditional 2D. You can kind of move some things around. Matt was like delighting all of us here.
Hello. That's how demons talk. Like Sean Connery. What?
Or this one anyway.
Sean Connery's demon.
I like that. Everybody's got to have a demon. So tell us a little bit about your process here. I see you've got some detail you've built up here.
Yes.
This is do you block out stuff in kind of that neutral gray first to pick out a shape, or?
What I usually do is I'll do a quick drawing like this. I'll kind of get in the spots, like that's the mouth, the nose, the eye, and what I'll do is I'll build this up a little bit. And
can you make that a little bit darker? I'm just looking at there. Oh, awesome. Yeah.
This is the mouth, nose, eye. I'll kind of draw it in lightly like this. I'll kind of find where the cast shadows are, like on here. On here,
so cast shadows, you think about where the light source is coming
exactly
from?
Like the light source is hitting like this, pretty much straight on, because it's the easiest to render for me. And so like the cast shadow of his cheekbone is right here, kind of his mouth under here. And so then from there, I usually will hit it with a gray, and then I'll go, and once you have that gray, and then it kind of becomes easy because you can sort of, let me make sure this is, how big is this? You can go in and like, oh, I want to put a highlight on this eye.
Oh, so you're actually drawing over in white to add in the highlight.
Exactly, like so every spot, like there's a cast shadow, you want to put kind of like
a what now?
The cast shadow.
Oh, cast shadow. Okay.
You want to put like a highlight so it really pops this area right here, And so you just go around, you want to bring this out.
That's incredibly detailed.
Yeah. So, thank you. And then, just going like this. And finding out spots like, I want this to be a round looking object. You pretty much just put in a pinpoint highlight and you can kind of get the feel for that.
So to pull that out?
Yep.
At what point do you bring color into the process?
For me, that's a little bit later. Really how I would build this image up would be I would take this and put it into Photoshop because they have a lot of really nice texture brushes. And so I would just hit this with some texture to get like the subsurface scattering like under your skin and stuff to make it look like skin.
Oh.
And I'd take a couple different layering techniques and push and pull the like how thick the skin is, how translucent it is. Then maybe go over it with like some thin veining for
Do you look at real world reference? I mean, obviously there's so many different types of skin textures and subcutaneous fats and all that affects.
Definitely. It's weird, but like just looking at people's faces, like,
oh God.
I look at it's hard when I'm talking to people. I'll be like looking like, oh, okay, that's where
Anna, you have great demon skin texture. Stand there in that bright light. I get those pores.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's just like seeing the different wrinkles, like knowing where the wrinkles would be on this guy because he has this sharp cheekbone right here. That's the most fun about learning anatomy is you're able to. Then when you're creating monsters, if you know the anatomy under it, it's easy to kind of really warp around and make it your own.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite type that you like to draw? I know you were talking about Bone Faction, but I'm just going to pull these cards up again so people can see. Obviously, it's a wide range of characters. You've got some kind of beautiful people with fleshier visages. We've got some straight-on full skeleton faces. And then there's all the detailing of, you know, costume and weaponry. And are there any of those different kind of categories of components that's a favorite of yours?
I've always been a fan of more tribal, like, little hangy bits. Like, that's why
the technical term for it.
Yeah. The doodads.
The doodads.
That would probably be my most. I mean, there's influences coming in from everywhere, and I enjoy all of them, and I assimilate them and to the same thing. But for some reason, I love doing like tribal, sort of primitive, awesome looking stuff. So
sweet. Lacey, do we have any questions on social for Matt?
We have a couple. Some asking about the apps that you're using, which one you're using now, if you prefer that over any other ones available.
I just got, this is Procreate, and so I just got the pencil. I think it's like $100. Procreate was like, I think like 20 or 11.
Oh, that's not
and so yeah, for saving the amount in my office, there's a ton of like paper lying all over the place because I've been trying to get away from paper and, you know, using way less. So this is what I came out with.
And you'd mentioned Photoshop. Is there any other software that you work with?
Zbrush as well, and you know, there's Marvelous Designer. There's a bunch of like 3D programs you use.
It's actually called Marvelous Designer.
Yeah, it's for like cloth simulation.
It's pretty great.
Yep. Still learning it.
I mean, pretty marvelous. Sorry, I can't resist.
We'd like to know
What else?
if Matt designs his own tattoos.
Well, now you have to show them off.
No, I can't.
So, come on.
I will not.
You guys
I will
do.
show. Yes, I like this one, this guy. I helped, like, I didn't design them specifically, but I was directing what I wanted to see. So I guess that's kind of designing.
Let's say yes.
Lacey.
And how often do you draw or create in full color?
It depends what I'm working on. Like, if I sit down at work and like, all right, Matt, get this done, then it's like, all right, I'll do it. But if it's like, if I go home and I just want to sculpt some crazy face, you know, in ZBrush, it's like, if it turns out amazing, then I'll take it into color. But sometimes, I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I don't get a lot of color work, actually.
Well, your comic book is full color.
That's very true. The Aftermath,
Yeah. It's a good read.
yes, it's full color.
And how does it feel to have been able to work on Court of the Dead?
Oh,
That's
fantastic.
a great question.
This is a dream job, Matt. For real. It's like, what do you get to work on? Well, Matt, you're going to draw demons today. Then later you're going to draw some freaking skeleton knights. And you're drawing some buff crazy dude. It's awesome.
Do you work on any other stuff at Sideshow besides Court?
Sometimes I do some core stuff, like some Star Wars, some
Core is
Marvel
what we
characters.
call we have all the, as you know, our different licenses of Marvel and DC and Star Wars and others, and that's core is kind of our slang term for that. But we have some other new IP which you can't talk about also
Nope.
that Matt is designing, but certainly that plays to your love of tribal and barbaric. But that's all I'll say about that.
What's your main influences or style influences that you actually are aware of that you can tell us?
Ooh. Jerome, he's an older artist. Brom.
Just Jerome.
Yeah,
He
Jerome.
goes by Jerome.
He's the one, like, when I learned how to draw, I was literally just turning his stuff to black and white to learn values.
Could you Google just Jerome?
Yeah, just Jerome painting, and you'll see it's
You know
it's
you've made it
ridiculous.
when you just go by one name.
yeah, it's like Seal.
Yeah. Yeah, just like that.
Did I date myself? Yeah, like Brom, Jerome, Amilcar. He's an amazing artist.
Amilcar Fong, one of our other on-staff designers, who you can go check out his artist profile video, which is amazing if you want to see some other awesome Court of the Dead artwork.
And pretty much almost any artist I work with here like, even though I didn't know about them, slowly I'll see them like, dude, your art's amazing. Oh, I like that. I'm kind of figure that out and just, take from everybody in the studio.
How did you get started with this career?
I was driving home from the military from East Coast to West, and I just decided, I'm going to be an artist because I liked drawing in high school. And so then from there, it was just like a straight, dead set, like, I need to get better, I need to get better, I need to learn more and more. And so that was pretty much it. Like, my brother also, he drew all the time, so he was showing me all his artwork, so it was kind of like, it was a little bit of both of those things.
Do you have a favorite piece that you've created for court stuff?
Ooh. Favorite piece?
How about within the Mourners called board game? We'll narrow it down a little bit for you.
Oh, definitely or whatever. These guys, you can't see it.
That Mourners card?
Yep.
The Minder's Bind?
Yes.
Are you Spirit Faction? Is this a...
I feel like I want to be Bone, but I think I'm Spirit, so I'm like a wannabe.
All right, we'll take you anyway, but...
Uh-huh.
All right, this is actually a good segue, though, talking about Spirit and some of your favorite characters, to talk about your other talent, which is sculpting. And so tell me a little bit about the process of sculpting these, the miniature figures for the Court of the Dead board game. You worked with Darren Donahue over at Project Raygun, right? So
Yes.
First, we must give a shout out to Darren, who also provided some excellent sculpting work of these figures. Quick disclaimer, what you're looking at right now are prototypes. They are just kind of quickie 3D outputs. They're not high fidelity. It was just for us to kind of check the shape and the balance of these figures. But you're seeing here odium, demethyl, kier, and a raker. So Matt, tell us a little bit about making these. How do you start off sculpting something like this?
Basically, Eric and Tom, they kind of came to me and they were just, once again, choosing what pose and kind of the idea that these sculptures would be, like what they're doing, and I don't know like what the word is, but
The composition, the
Yeah.
pose, the character reference, all 2D, right? Pretty much?
yes, I started a little bit in 2D, but then I went 3D because when you're sculpting, you might as well just get into it and show roughs to them. So I'll do roughs of these characters, like very
And that's like
blocky.
a 3D sketch. When you say rough, what do you mean?
Yeah, like they don't have a lot of detail in them, so they're very chunky and kind of clunky and look a little off. But then through their guidance, like, all right, we want this arm moved down, this sword a little bit thicker, this one here, this one there, and then all of a sudden you'll start being able to like dial it in closer to closer together.
What are some of the challenges at sculpting at this scale? It's pretty tiny.
It's an interesting one because I'm doing this, like, usually these were traditional, and so with your eye you're able to only detail the level your eye can pick up. Where in 3D like Zbrush, I can zoom in to Kier's eye here and put a pupil and pores on it. So the challenge with doing these digitally was knowing where to stop. So instead of doing
Because when you actually print it, you don't see that detail.
exactly like, yeah, I sculpted knuckles on demethyl, but will you ever see that? No. And that's just like one of those things, like, you need to streamline the process so you're not getting all fun and doing all this filigree that'll never see the light of day. So that is the number one challenge of doing these miniatures.
Do you have a favorite of the miniatures that you've sculpted?
Yeah, demethyl is amazing. I love this one.
Why in particular? him?
Just there's the pose is great, and just like what like his arms are doing and his hands, like, it's so good.
And all these miniatures are actual stretch goals that have been unlocked over the past month through the Court of the Dead Mourners Call Kickstarter, which you can check out. You can go to sideshow.com/Kickstarter, get a closer look at these guys there and kind of the benefits of playing them and how they work in the game. So these were all bonus stretch goal figures, which are not extra add-ons. I should add that disclaimer. The entire Kickstarter campaign, everything that we've unlocked is part of the all-in basic pledge for the game. But the game also came, the very base game that we designed with 50 different figures, including, can we switch the camera or should we pull these guys over? I want to talk a little bit about the guilds here, which Matt also had a pretty significant hand in designing. These were pretty fun because I seem to remember going out into the yard, right, and putting some people on a physical turntable. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I saw the aftermath of those photos. I wasn't there for the
actual shoot.
Yeah.
So we had actually people posed on a physical turntable in these poses, and then took like a turnarounds, and then that was the actual reference. So rather than 2D art, sometimes you get photographic art, right?
Yeah, it's just like mood boards and stuff.
With some, and then you draw over that, correct? Like some of the sketching and the details.
Sometimes it's rare to like get a pose and it's like exactly correct in perspective and stuff. So I'll usually just I'll look at the pose and sketch, like, because I know where all the anatomy is, so I'll just sketch where they're at just so I'm able to move it a little bit easier in Photoshop.
And what were some of the challenges of these guys? There's some really very fine parts on some of those, like some of the staffs here. Is that a challenge?
Yeah, Darren, he was killing it with this stuff, and so I kind of came in and like through streamlining again. It's just like I'd pick up on little things and kind of bring it out what Tom wanted, what his vision was for these things. So I did like very minimal stuff with these guys, other than like some of this stuff. I guess it's not minimal, but it was awesome to be able to work with a fellow miniature maker.
And how did you get into sculpting? It's obviously a whole other artistic craft, distinct from 2D illustration.
There was always a draw for it because I started in drawing.
Ew.
And there was just something about like you need to see behind the curtain. Like in 2D, you get a certain angle, but like I wanted to know what was behind, like the shoulder. How does the shoulder work from behind in this pose? And so I started learning 3D.
Did you just pick it up on your own? You just like bought the software?
No, I went to school for it, Vancouver Film School.
Oh, cool.
And the good thing with actually learning sculpture as well as 2D is both will feed into each other. So when you're sculpting a bicep, you're like, all right, I can draw a bicep, I understand. But when you're actually sculpting it and trying to connect it to like the elbow or the shoulder, that will then influence the way you draw it. Because then you'll know, oh, that's how the anatomy works. So everybody learn how to sculpt and draw. It'll feed into each other, and it'll make you a better artist. So
cool. Lacey, do we have any questions on social about Matt's 3D work and his sculpting?
We have a couple more questions. Somebody would also like to know if you make it to any consumer conventions like Comic-Con.
Yes.
Yeah.
Monsterpalooza, Comic-Con. We also might could get to Designer Con, but for now we will. It's been San Diego Comic-Con.
And both as yourself and with Sideshow. So for San Diego, Matt will be part of the team over at the Code of the Dead booth. So you should come by, check out our booth, meet Matt, and talk to Matt. And then you go with your own kind of personal artwork as well, right?
Yes.
To, like you said, to Monsterpalooza this year. You went with your brother.
Yes.
For the comic Aftermath.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome and a good read, and everyone should look it up.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
When drawing, do you enjoy simple ones over a more complicated one, or do you like the complicated work?
That's a great question.
Unfortunately, my eye tends towards complicated. I love all my artwork at home. All the stuff on my desktop is all like Pixar style and cartoony, because that's something I could do, but it would feel so contrived doing it. I'm gonna try. Like that's another frontier I want to explore. But that I adore simple style. I love it. But not unfortunately, but I tend towards more complicated designs.
Which is a good thing, because I don't think there's any such thing as a simple core to the design.
No,
core to the
there is
dead
not.
design. So that's why you're such a good fit for this world.
And how long have you been at Sideshow?
Like a year and 3/4, almost 2 years now.
Thereabouts.
So.
Will these 3D printed ones, will they be scaled up and sold as scale or quarter scale statues?
That's a really interesting question. I'll let Matt talk a little bit more about that, but there's some challenges in the detail, and I think Matt can talk more about this, but you really have to design for the scale, and I think scaling up requires more work than scaling down, obviously, and so that's why we do design for the scale, and it might just be more worthwhile to design something at quarter scale, initially intended for that, rather than design something at this scale and then scale it up and try and add the detail to make it work.
I completely agree. It would take, it would be awesome to have these bigger, but it would be months of people sculpting the same sort of character again. So.
But I mean, one of the benefits of Zbrush is we can experiment within a certain size range, right? So if we have
Yes.
a design, there's a certain sort of acceptable up and down bounce, right?
Oh,
So we can
definitely.
put out.
Yeah, all these can be, you could, depending on what the printer is, you can, make this thing 12 foot tall if you wanted. Or smaller than that. That's the beauty of 3D.
A lot of people have trouble drawing and sculpting things like hands and feet.
Hmm.
How do you approach that? Getting better at that?
It's just breaking those things down to, a square with a bunch of rectangles connected to it. And then once you get that, you can turn it to that, and then you can start connecting these things together. It's not super hard. Or for some people, for me it was. One thing is always observe people, like not in a creepy way, but just like people talking or watching a movie, just seeing where their crease line, their laugh line is, and what it is, like the fat pad on your cheek, how prominent it is, or it's not there, depends on what your folds on your face will look like. So if you start trying to look under the skin, and it'll influence and make you more perceptive about what's showing on the outside.
When you say you break stuff down into its basic shapes,
Mhm.
and that's obviously how you're picturing it in your mind's
Yes.
eye, do you think of that in a 2D or a 3D capacity?
It's easier to do it in 2D, and but yeah, I pretty much break it down in 2D. Just
So mentally kind of think of it like the flat planes and how you would see it kind of from a 2D perspective.
exactly. That's it.
Cool.
What would be your perfect future project that you would like to work on? The dream project?
Oh man.
We'll clip this segment and email it to Tom.
Yeah. This is pretty much it. This is a great property to be working on. Other than my own personal stuff, this is the best you can get, I think, out there right now. Other than like, hey, let's make more monsters, this is it.
So if you could pick, say, I'm going to rephrase that question a different way. If you could pick a format and a type of character, like male, female, creature, and a format, like miniature to 1-to-1, what would be those two parameters in like an ideal Matt project?
Oh, it'd be like 6/5 scale monster. It doesn't matter, male or female. It's sculpting monsters is a lot more fun because, unlike doing a beautiful woman's face, people can judge that. That is what a beautiful woman looks like. Where a monster, it's like teeth are blasting out of this guy's eyeballs. I don't know what that looks like in real life, but that's a monster.
We're good. Okay,
right.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Matt Molen,
Thank you.
senior concept artist here at Sideshow, who worked on Court of the Dead Mourner's Call, our strategic tabletop board game. The Kickstarter for this game is currently in its last 48 hours, so please go to sideshow.com/Kickstarter to check out the fine handiwork of Mr. Molen on both the cards and the figures, as well as the rest of the team here at Sideshow, and of course Project Raygun, our licensee and partner who produced this game. Thank you for joining us.